Welcome back to the Zero Weakness Podcast, where we talk about how to be a better lifter, how to be a better coach, and everything in between. Make sure you subscribe and enjoy.
Welcome back to another episode of the Zero Weakness Podcast. This episode is brought to you by Establishment Coffee. If you want a discount on some coffee, some really good beans, head to www.establishmentcoffeeco.com.au. Use the promo code ZERO with a W25. That's 025 for 25% off your next order. We've got two very, very special guests on the podcast today with myself and Tom Brosey. We've got Dr. Jordan Shallow and Dr. Jordan Jiunta. You've probably heard of them from RX Radio, which is a huge podcast in our space. They've also the head founders and owners of Prescript. Everybody who listens to this podcast knows who these guys are. So really warm welcome and thanks for coming on.
I hope that's not true.
This is the first podcast where I've actually shat myself. Not like physically, but I'm like, fuck. I love these guys. You know, I know lots of like pro footy players. We've had them on the show and I couldn't care less. Like, as in, I don't get nervous around them, but I saw you guys get out of the car and I was like, sweet, Jordan Shallow's there. I'm shitting myself. Oh shit, there's Jiunta as well. Nah, this is hell on earth. Bridget was like, can you just calm down? They're just normal people.
That's the weirdest thing ever.
Really?
I don't deal well. Not like I don't deal well with it, but that makes no sense to me.
Yeah, it's always weird walking into a place and people already know who you are.
Especially with the podcast. So you guys might find this where you say shit because it's just like, you know, your buddies and you're just kind of talking shit. Because for the longest time, no one listened. Like we're 400 episodes in. Like we've been doing the podcast since like 2015, 2016.
Yeah.
And there's stuff that we said that was like, oh, like, hey, I listened to the podcast. Like, sorry. Like my mom used to text me and be like, Jordan, like, why did you say that? I was like, oh shit. And now it's getting to the point where it's kind of weird. Like, oh, people actually listen. That's probably not a good thing.
Yeah, I find it weird going to competitions and people ask me how Buddy is. Like, I don't post much about Buddy on my Instagram or anything like that. But like, how do you know about this? Why do you know so much about my life?
Yeah.
It's strange. And I've taken in recent years to just doubling down and just being completely transparent. And it's just like, because then it's like the Mark Twain thing. If you don't lie, you don't have to remember what you said. So that way it's like, hey, on this one post, you blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, sure. That sounds like something I'd say. That sounds legit. Because it is a tough thing to like manage in a sense, because it is something that needs managing, because if you don't and you think you don't need to manage it, you definitely do. Like you need to have a line in the sand of like where social media kind of like how it interacts with your life, because it will interact in ways that you can't predict and it'll fuck you up.
Yeah, for sure. How long did it take you guys to sort of adjust to that since you started? Like, because I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure you wouldn't have started RX Radio with the idea of it ending up being, you know, Prescript and what it is today, right?
So that's where you're kind of...
Or I am wrong.
So yeah, we started the podcast and the business on the same day. Okay. Technically speaking, it was an idea that we had. So we came up with the idea for Prescript and in its first iteration. And then simultaneously we're like, well, we need an audience to sell to. And we had friends who, the Mind Pump podcast, which is like fairly big in the fitness space. I'd been doing some content for them online, their YouTube stuff. And I think at the time they'd had me on one of their episodes. And just kind of, you know, being in the like sort of the light of what their podcast is doing. I was like, oh shit, like this is a thing that's going to catch. So, I mean, never would have predicted like end up in Australia and do all this crazy shit. But like, it was definitely premeditated that it would be a vehicle for us to market our products through.
Yeah. So talk about that, because Prescript as it is now was different to how it begun, right? Like what was the original goal?
What would you say?
It kind of lacked direction in the beginning, but I know when we saw what was starting to happen, the shift to online subscription-based fitness companies, like one that I worked with early on was Ramwad. It's like an online yoga company marketed towards CrossFitters. We were just kind of seeing what they were doing in the space, and then it was a really profitable business plan. So with what we were doing, both him and I were kind of growing an Instagram following as we were in school, and we didn't really know where to direct those people or where to push them towards or how to profit off of following, which it seems pretty intuitive and a lot easier to do. Like even I got an ad this morning that Instagram now allows you to put out like premium content that people pay for. So it wasn't what it is now, like 2015-ish, 2016. So we're just starting to see people in the similar space that were doing really well off of this stuff. And we figured, all right, what can we put together that's going to add value and allow us to grow a business with a similar model. And it started off with us doing programming. We were literally selling spreadsheets that we were doing custom intakes and writing programs for these people and doing like weekly check-ins over email. It was like a remote coaching model, more or less, but it was meant to be this kind of, faceless, anonymous company that's turning out these spreadsheets. So that was the first iteration that we went with.
I think we tried to differentiate on the clinical side, like with both of us being chiropractors and in strength sports. Like Jay was competing like heavily in CrossFit, like West Coast regionals on a yearly basis, and I was doing what I was doing in powerlifting. So it's like, well, a lot of people were putting out programming. So we almost, just as a natural evolution of the content we put out, people started to come to us with like, injuries. And we started off just like, all right, well, let's see if we can fix your shoulder, fix your knee, fix your hip, or whatever it was. And so we would do these things, and over time, common things present commonly, and so you'd have like kind of like general heuristics in which you could kind of prepackage and start with like a new shoulder case. And like, all right, well, this is kind of looks pretty similar to the last 30 shoulder cases we did. So can we make this scalable and minimize the interaction and make sort of this heuristic program that's like, all right, this will probably work for most shoulders most of the time. And we got really good results, but we started to realize that people slipping through the cracks. And then I just started asking people, like, can you send me like what your program is currently? And they're like, yo, okay, like, yeah, this is a big issue. Like just the overall volume or intensity would seem to be like the underlying issue, and no corrective exercise or load management strategy would be useful in flying in the face of what they were doing. So then we started to transition from the more corrective exercise into like subscription-based programming for powerlifting, hypertrophy style training, Olympic weightlifting. So that was first couple of years, I think.
Right. Yeah. 2.5 years we spent doing that.
And then it was just kind of keeping our ear to the ground. And then as opportunities came, we began to pivot just with what the market sort of demanded of us. So we kind of switched from the training side into the education space.
Yeah. So how did that evolution occur? Was it people asking for it? Was it you seeing a hole in the market? Was it you were providing education in what you were doing anyway and saw a market opportunity? Bit of everything?
Yeah, I think it was kind of, it was the market telling us where to fit. So like we were selling the wrong product for the message that we were putting on our socials. Like we were very heavily education based, like on Instagram. I remember when Instagram went to 60-second videos, and I was just up there like an auctioneer, like talking as fast as I could to try and jam it all in 60 seconds. So that kind of like, that was really kind of the niche that I settled into. Not so much anything about my own personal exercise programming. So here I have educational content on this platform that might not be suited best for it, but I'm selling a product through that platform that has, indirectly something to do with education. Like, oh, if people think I'm smart, they'll think my programming is smart. We can sit here and logically make that leap, but that is a quantum leap for a consumer to make on a social media platform. So then it's like, I was actually approached by a gym franchise in Canada to do some education internally for them and help them restructure their corporate model of educating their trainers. And then I was like, well, let's just take this on under Prescript so we could make it scalable, like make it this, not faceless, because I think that sounds a little disingenuous, but make the brand bigger than anyone within it. So then we took this Good Life, similar, but I don't think the same company, the Good Life Fitness.
Yeah.
And we took that opportunity to kind of make a pivot in the primary core of our business and switch it from like a training company to an education company.
Yeah. And I think that's really important for people to hear from people like you guys, is that, in the age of social media where there are people with massive followings, that if you are going to truly transcend into a big business, it can't rely solely on you because you're one person, right? And the business has to shine through. And how can you scale that? How can you get more people under that brand? It's the same thing with Zero. Like Zero can't rely on Thomas or Daniel or whoever is at the top of each gym or the online coaching. It has to have its own name. And like you said, be kind of faceless outside of that.
Yeah. And it's like knowing when to pull back. And I think we were lucky early on that we just had friends who were kind of suffering from not pulling back early enough and remaining the face. Cause it's financially incentivized to remain the face of it. Yeah. Like in the short term, it's like, yeah, you can, like, it's crazy. That cult of personalities, like the kind of money you can make online, at least, coming from a place where I was earmarked to just work in a fucking factory my whole life. So I was like, wow, this is wild. So it definitely took like a lot of me learning through the experience of my friends who are in the industry, who are much further along in sort of their business development, their career development, and to see them try and pull back and bring it behind something and put the brand at the forefront. So, in short term, it was I mean, it was a no-brainer when it came to, because I just saw it every day with my friends fighting, trying to claw back and buy back their time, buy back their freedom, buy back their anonymity. No matter what they were making, they couldn't do that. So I was like, no, let's put a business in front of this. And that was really when things started to shift. We found that fit that better matched what we were actually putting out, like the messaging we were putting out, and then things started to catch fire from there.
Mm. So what does Prescript look like for you guys then moving forward? I know you've brought nutrition into it. Is there plans to expand education even further into other areas as well?
Yeah, we've talked a lot about this. On the education side, that's like one arm of the business. So we'll look at different sub arms like nutrition. I'm remiss, although we've talked about it, and I don't know when we'll act on it. It's probably going to be a personnel thing when we find the right person. The nutrition happened quick. Mm-hmm. Shit, I think I text you. It would have been January, December.
Yeah, it moved fast.
Yeah.
Once we gave it the thumbs up, it was rolling right away.
Yeah, so that was really, and it was really just a matter, like most things in the business, of like finding the right people.
Yeah,
and that's been something we're super lucky to have. So when we met, we had no aspirations to get into nutrition, and then one day I just had a conversation with a guy who's now, who heads up our nutrition side of things, and he was just coming out of a 10-year professor role at a medical school in Canada. He was, Yale trained, PhD and postdoc, like a very accredited, incredible just person and academic, and he was looking for something different, and we could offer him that. So we've talked about on just the education arm alone, like maybe on the business side, because it is something, but it wouldn't be through us. Like the only business experience we have is running this thing for the last 7 years and just being able to be agile and make these changes on the fly. So if we ever did meet the right person who could offer a service equal to the service that we offer in biomechanics and training, and then what Dwayne and Phil offer in nutrition on the business end, that's something that's obviously like a hole in the market, as you know, and something that's just, it's really predatory. So you see a lot of our coaches going out for that information, and they end up in the wrong place, and they end up in a bad way. So that's just one part. And, obviously like the technology that you can use to support this business and the leverage that technology can give you in business is something that we're not turning a blind eye to. So without like saying too much, like we'll definitely be looking down another arm of the business, which will be heavy into the integrated of, on the tech side of things.
Yeah.
Because you guys were one of the first people in our industry that offered an education service or created a system.
Were we though? Like
no, a good one.
I think like it's generational, right? Like, Charles Poliquin, for better for worse, changed the game for always, right? Like he was the first, in my opinion, but he just didn't have the resources that we had, right? Like he didn't have. I mean, the internet wasn't really a thing when Charles started. So it's like if Charles was here now, rest in peace, and he had access to these tools, what could Poliquin Group be, right? Like what could Strength Sensei be? So I think it's a generational thing where like I got into this because of Poliquin. Like we did a seminar last weekend and Luke Lehman was there, who used to work for Charles. And it was really cool to have Luke sit there and ask questions and say like, wow, this really helped like piece things together. And I was like, dude, you were the dude with the dude. You're the reason I'm doing this. So I just think it's like, it was maybe a little bit of a lull because the pendulum had swung to, I don't want to say easier, but just different ways to generate revenue in the fitness industry. Like exercise programming has been popping for like 10, 15 years. And then education just kind of like laid dormant. And we had this like in-person opportunity that just created like a vacuum in the digital market that we ourselves were like, okay, because it was all private, right? Like you couldn't take one of our courses for a few years. I was teaching, I think I did 15 weekends. I mean, I did 43 weekends in a row one year, and it was all private. So it was like Good Life Fitness, Ultimate Performance across the world. So it generated like an interest online that couldn't be fulfilled. And I just kind of kept, not purposely, and I can't stress this enough, I have no idea what I'm doing. But it just like, people like, how do I get a hold? Like, how can I do this? I was documenting it all on social media. It's like, I want in. And then one day, September of 2017 or something, and we're like, all right, hey, let's do this PSL1 thing. And then we just turned into digital, and COVID happened, and the rest is kind of history.
And how did you know when you're like, okay, this is getting huge? Like you said, you just worked 43 weekends in a row. When did you know, all right, we need to start doing PSL level 1. We need to go into PSL level 2. What did that look like?
I don't know, man. We just do shit.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember where I was. I was in the Hawaiian island of Kauai, and I just had like kind of an epiphany And I was just like, not epiphany. That's so stupid. We work online. Get over yourself. What a douchebag thing to say. But like, I just like, I don't know. It was the first. It was probably the first vacation I'd had since I really started, and I just like my head was a bit clear. And we have this even now in the last week, just being able to sit back with our own thoughts and be like, okay, like what's big direction stuff. And at the time, I was still able to manipulate our website and put products up for sale, but now it's too complicated, and I'm not allowed to. They told me to stop. Then I just put it up for sale. And so it was mid-September with an October 1st start. And I was in Hawaii, so the time zone to where our COO was at the time. I think she was in Washington. So it was like something like 8-hour time zone change. So I put it up while she was asleep. And so I put up the product. I'm like, okay, I think like 16 weeks will be good. I had zero the curriculum written. Zero. I didn't have any, like I would be making the slideshow for the first L1 lectures while I'm teaching it. So I would like stop screen share, go on Google Image while I'm talking about something, grab things and put it in copy. Obviously, it's like gone through fucking 12 or 15 iterations, so it's all buttoned up now. But I literally did it on the fly. For years, that course was taught in every Wednesday was a different city. And so people kind of got along for the ride, but there was no like conscious strategy meeting or anything. There never really has been. It's just been like, what do you think of this? What about this, and this? Okay, you're right. But yeah, we put it up for sale, and then by the time our COO woke up the next day, she was like, "What the hell is this?" And I was like, "Check how many of these things that we've sold. Like we sold like 17 in the first day or something." So that was a little bit of an inflection point. But as far as like, you know, I still love, because relative to what we want to do, what we know we're gonna do, we're not even close to there yet. So I try to not look back very often. So it's scary to me. Like James, just before the podcast started, was like, "Hey man, like I've been working for you guys for 2 years." I'm like, "We've been around for 2 years?" And I'm like, "Doc, you've been around for like 7 years." I'm like, so I don't know. That's how I look. I don't try and take an inventory too often. Like I don't reflect too much. I don't slow down to think about it because it fucking scares the shit out of me.
How big is the Prescript family? Like in terms of staff.
Oh, staff wise?
Should we name them off? We got 3 Jameses.
3 Jameses. I mean, so there's like internal, and then there's like lawyers, and like we have a trademark lawyer, we have house counsel, we both have personal attorneys, we have an immigration attorney, accountant, team of accountants, bookkeepers. So we're probably 10 just on like the back end there, and probably another 20 with like executive assistants, coaches, like people on some form of the payroll. Now with like our second language team as well. So like with our Spanish team and our French team and our Chinese team and stuff like that.
All right.
Yeah, it's big, man. It's a lot. And again, I almost like get stressed out doing these podcasts. I'm like, oh no, they're gonna make me like put it all out there and like actually see the relative size of it to where it's been, because there's a lot of moving pieces for sure.
It's fine. We'll get our Spanish team to translate this for our Spanish audience.
I got a guy. Well, we got guys. So if you need anything done in Spanish, French, Chinese, or
aren't you guys the Spanish team?
Yeah, we're fake. We're the Mexicans / Spaniards of Asia, the Filipinos. That's what we are.
You guys don't have a human resources department yet, do you?
Not quite.
Working on it. Work in progress. What's been the learning curve for you both then? Like, you know, because I remember the Muscle Dog being, you know, videos in the treatment room at Boss Barbell, you know, poor quality videos put on YouTube when you had a Instagram following of like 5,000. What's the transition been like to, you know, managing a payroll of 20 to 30 people? You know, it's a very, very weird thing, doing your own thing and then having people underneath you and dealing with all the fun that comes with managing lots of people if you've never been.
I think at the beginning it's like you have to wear a lot of hats. And I think that's where like you see like the entrepreneurial startup fitness bullshit business mentor culture shit, and it's just like, you know, delegate. It's like, I could tell you everything about these cameras, right? I could tell you everything about these lenses. I could tell you about this setup. I could tell you about this road switch. I could tell you about other options. I could tell you what you paid for this. You know, I could tell you what the software you'll probably use to edit it, put it together, because I did it.
Yeah.
Right. And I could tell you the most inefficient way to do it because I did it. Right. So I think at the beginning, it's like understand the scope of like the valences that you'll have to cover, and just, you don't necessarily have to be good at them, but you have to be aware of them, especially as you start to, you know, using like the valence analogies, you start to give off these outer tasks that probably aren't your core nucleus of what you're good at in the business. You know, it doesn't take as much energy to knock those outer valence electrons off. Right. So just go a little sciencey. So they're a little easier to give up. So you can give these tasks up, but you need to know, like, you know, if I could do something better and I was giving something to a media guy, it's like, what are you doing, man? What did you use that for? Did you use Canva? Are you serious? You use Canva? You didn't use Photoshop? Like, what am I paying? I can use Canva. But then it's like the difficult part becomes, you know, as you relegate or delegate these tasks off that are, you know, clearly not your primary core focus. It's identifying what that nucleus is, and then trying to, as hard as you can, figure out what are things that I'm lying to myself that are not the primary thing I'm good at. Because once you get closer to that core, it's harder for them to go, like, to give those tasks up. But that's where all the energy comes from, right? So if you can give those tasks up, like when we, in the last couple of years, our roles were really ill-defined, right? In the sense that we didn't know who did, shit got done. We didn't know how. Everyone was grateful when it was done. No one took any of the credit or any of the blame. So there wasn't really an accountability system. But I would say the last year and a half, it's been really clear, like, what my role is, what Jay's role is when it comes to interacting with staff and personnel. So I think it's just like being very self-aware of what you're good at, and over time just knowing when to start to shift off these things that aren't your primary core skill that you bring to the company, and just delegating those to good people.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And that's the reason you'll hear this guy talking like, I don't know, 300 words a minute. And I'm over here just like, yeah, that's all right. That's right.
That's how this works.
Yeah, because that's how this works. Yeah, he's the relationships. He's the guy that can walk into a room and then leave with everyone as a friend, right? And then my mind works a lot more in just kind of an organizational, numbersy kind of way. So I deal with that side of the business. It's just more so managing, you know, we need this to happen with these people, and kind of figuring out, delegating to accountants and lawyers and figuring out all that stuff. That's kind of where I shine. I'm a little bit better at working in the background, kind of making sure everything's working the way it needs to. And then this guy's out on the floor doing his thing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's fine to use science analogies as long as we don't bring compression and expansion into this. Okay. This is a safe space.
Safe space?
Yeah,
oh,
safe space.
I can make it. I can make it that. I can compare anything to anything. I could do that whole thing over again with old movie references.
Nice.
That's my whole job. It's just that.
Amazing. How's the transition been into the world of being influencers?
I push back.
Yeah. I just don't consider myself an influencer, so I don't have to deal with that.
Where's the weirdest place you've been recognized?
Cappadocia, Turkey, probably. That's a weird one. And just any place. They're all weird because I never thought I would be in a position where I'd ever get to see the places that I see. Yeah. So every time I'm in a place that's not my hometown, like, this is the craziest thing ever. Where did you find me? Like, I'm so curious because it's strange. Like, I don't ever anticipate being recognized. Like, it's still a really weird thing. So anywhere I go that's not my hometown is the weirdest place ever. There's like, when I say Cappadocia, it's probably one of the most remote places I've been. Well, yeah, any weird place I've been where I've been noticed is the weirdest place, because it's like, what the fuck am I doing here? I have no business here. But I just push back on the influencer thing. It's such a negative connotation, and rightfully so, I think. Like, I don't think I fit the criteria of what that is. Although, without ever knowing what the criteria for an influencer is, it's hard for me to say that.
Yeah, I would disagree. I mean, like, an influencer is someone who has influence, and you've had influence. And so I think you can spin it, right? You can be a positive influencer. I think you guys have a massive positive influence. I would have never wore Lululemon shorts.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. So
you look great.
You don't. You just lie.
Don't listen to him.
With my Carhartt guy. We're just going to be G's up with our nice sneakers.
Well, no, because he's the one who told me. I was like, yeah, Jiunta's always talking about Lululemon. He's like, I wear Lululemon. I get them every year for Christmas.
Do you wear Lululemon? Yeah. That's my fucking guy. You know that, right?
This is how influential you guys are. For about 5 minutes, I was an aspiring weightlifter, because I did CrossFit as well, so I used to train CrossFit and do weightlifting. Oh. And I remember watching a video of yours back in the day. No, it might have been a podcast, and you're talking about what you had for dinner, and you're a weightlifter. I was used to be around under 74 kilos, so we're the same height, roughly the same size. I remember in a video, you're like, yeah, I'm having a T-bone steak and potatoes for dinner. Yeah. I'm like, well, looks like that's what I'm having for dinner. That must be what weightlifters eat.
That's a positive influence.
Yeah,
Exactly.
It's a good thing none of us got into hard drugs. It's like, here's Jiunta's meth breakfast.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, I don't know. It does, in my mind, it carries. Because I look at, and I parse out the difference between having impact and having influence.
Yeah.
And that's something that, like, yeah, having an impact, sure. That's our whole, that's why we do what we do, is like, if we leave this industry the same as the way we found it, then we failed. Right? So I want to have an impact on the industry. And the way you do that is through having an impact on people. And it's like, it might seem like such a subtle nuance, like both words start with I. And it's like, are you really that pedantic? And the answer is yes, I am. I am that pedantic.
Good.
I will create my own little title to not be affiliated with things that have a negative. I think impact can be positive. I think influence is negative because it indicates some sort of blind following. Mm-hmm. And that's because I'm so transparent in social media. Like, I don't care if people know every intimate detail of my life.
Yeah.
Because it's easy for me. So it's like, that to me is like, they are well informed about what it is they're getting. Like, I don't walk out of a room and be like, oh, fucking losers or whatever. And no, like, I will leave a seminar, I'll have everyone's cell phone number by the time I leave. Mm-hmm. And it's like, that's where because I put so much, not effort into it, but I just give a shit. And it's like, I've seen that on the other side where people are just like, you know, they exploit the industry, and it's like, yo, this industry's sick. Why? Because I don't work in a fucking Chrysler factory putting doors on a town and country minivan. That was my future. Me sell a little bit of Coke on the side. That would have been my life. So like, I'm really, I take it pretty serious. So that's like, whenever I hear that, I know it's always joking, but it's like, you know, I lose a lot of sleep over trying to make sure that's not what we do, because I don't want it to be blind. I want people to know, like, hey, this is us to a T. Like, when you get in a room with us online, whatever, like, oh, you're the same. It's like, great.
Right.
So now you're not just like blindly following and being like influenced. It's like, hopefully if you fuck with us, it's like, we're actually having an impact. And if you don't, like, I totally understand. Like, I totally understand why people would not resonate with us somehow, but that's us Monday through Monday, 365, 24/7. So that's like where I see a lot of disingenuous behaviors around people that usually adopt those properties of an influencer. They get on like the hand clap. Cardinal sign. This is why I'm not an influencer, because I don't start my videos like, all right, guys, what are we doing? That's number one sign you might be an influencer.
How good. Yeah. For me, I really resonated with you guys really early on because, you know, there was a part in our, there was a period in training where CrossFitters hated bodybuilders hated CrossFitters. And I could relate with you guys because I loved it all. You know, I loved bodybuilding. I loved CrossFit. I loved weightlifting, and I was like, hey, fuck, these guys get along. Like, one of them's a fucking diehard powerlifter, bodybuilder, one likes CrossFit, and one likes weightlifting, and you guys got along, and you guys were like, for me, the first people to kind of do that with a little bit of a status, and that was reputable. So I was like, oh, this is cool. There are people out there that can do it all.
Yeah, I think the thing that brought us together was simply just a love for training.
Yeah,
right. That's universal. Whatever your discipline is that you love that thing, and that's it. It's the reason that I still go to a gym every single day. Like, I set my entire life up so that I could be in a gym. We're in a gym right now.
Right.
And I've never had to leave a gym, and I somehow make a living from it. Like, it's just the love and the passion that comes with training like that I think brought us together.
Well, we were also kind of had a weird Stockholm syndrome type thing, because we were both in chiropractic college at the same point. So it's like imagine being like in a hostage situation in a bank vault. And like, we're both just sitting there like, hey man, do you want to be friends? Like, cause it was 4 years of just sitting there and lecture 40, 50 hours a week. And you saw it. Like, I remember one of the kids that I was first friends with, just based off of physical stature. It was like he was one of the top wrestlers in the country in his undergrad, like University of Michigan. Like, he was a no joke. He was a dude, like jacked as hell. Like, okay, you want to be friends? And as the years went on, he just fell off. Like, he like let school take a priority, and like, hey, I'm sure he's doing well, but I just couldn't resonate with that. Like, you know, the reason, when we used to post our grades in the classroom, there's like 50, 60 kids in the class, maybe 50. And there was like 4 spaces on this sheet of just numbers. It was just like your student ID number. And then after the 4 spaces, it was all the people who failed. And passing for all the classes was 70%. All the tests passing was 70%. And I actually got to know what his student number was because I'd just watch him follow with his finger to find his student number, and it would be right above those 4 spaces that indicated that you failed. And the only reason I was looking there because my number was right there with his, and so like I could just be like, "Yo, well, what did I get?" And he could tell because he knew my student number because we were always like neck and neck of just crossing the line because we were always in the gym. Like I don't think for the 4 years we were in grad school that either of us missed a session. Right? Like early mornings, late nights, whatever it took. And it was like, it was such an easy transition subliminally when we went into business after school. It was like, well, that's what we need, right? Like we need that passion that'll make sure it's late nights, early mornings, whenever, whatever it takes. Because that's ultimately still to this day what drives us in the business is like, we just like working out, man. Like that's all it is. And I think when you compete at a high level, that noise starts to fall away. Right? Like because you respect what it takes, like just thinking laterally about, okay, like it's not a snatch or a clean and jerk, but I can understand the technical components of a bench press. I don't know how to bench press or I don't know how to snatch, but I'm assuming he runs into similar frustrations and problems with X, Y, and Z just as I do at this level. So there was like a lot of like camaraderie around there. He was actually one of the main reasons I got into competing in powerlifting was he was so actively competing in CrossFit. I was like, well, fuck, man, I'm just sitting here spinning my wheels. I might as well do something about it. So then I did my first meet after he'd done like his 3rd regionals in CrossFit while going to school. It's like, all right, I got to step my game up.
Was your first meet did you go to school in Canada?
So I did my undergraduate in Canada.
Yeah.
So I did 4 years in the University of Toronto, and then I did 4 years at Chiropractic College in California. So my first meet was 2015.
Okay.
And that would have been in California.
Were you involved with Boss by then?
I was, yeah. So I got in with Dan early when I was still in school. And Dan, I just kind of let me train at Boss. I'd go in a few times a week to like work with him on the clinical side, and then he would kind of show me the ropes on the powerlifting side. Yeah. And then, it was June 18th, 2015, if I'm not mistaken, in Santa Cruz, California. He registered me for the meet. He's like, "Yeah, you're fucking doing this." And it's like, he's not a guy you negotiate with. He's altogether an unreasonable human being. And he wanted me to cut into the 110s, and I cut down to the 110s. I remember, I'll never forget. He checked in on me after weigh-ins, and he's like, "What'd you weigh in at?" I'm like, "I don't know, like 109.8. He's like, "Great, I want you by 117 in the morning." And I was like, is it possible to get diabetes in a day? Hand to God, Dan Green's text message back to me was, "If you try hard enough, it is." And I was just like, okay, so this is going to be my powerlifting career. Got it.
Oh dear. Was your undergraduate in California as well?
Mine was in Pennsylvania, like the northeast of the United States.
And then you came across to California.
Yeah, okay. Absolutely.
Because it's a question that I had. It doesn't fit into this current conversation. We're going to throw it out there anyway. Like, obviously, you guys spent time in California and the Bay Area in particular, and obviously in a place like that, you're surrounded by the tech industry, a lot of fake entrepreneurs, a lot of really rich people as well. I find the culture of San Francisco and just the Bay Area in general so fascinating in terms of how people relate to other people. Seems to be so much driven by not who they are, but where they work, how much money they make. It's a very different world. And then I sort of relate that to you guys and your business and who you are as people and the growth that you've experienced. And just like as you've demonstrated through the way that you guys are talking right now and just who you are as people, you're still super down to earth, still super cool, still connect and are willing to talk to, us people, us plebs down here. But you know what I'm saying, right? Like, has seeing the kind of lifestyle and the kind of way that people act when they're around money there fueled you to remain down to earth?
So my experience with it depends on. It's a good question. I think having each other is super helpful because we have really similar like upbringings and stuff. Like none of us came from money. Like we didn't know what to do with it when we had it. We'd be just as happy if we didn't, because for the longest time in our lives we never did. Like going through school, we were talking about this earlier. We were thinking about it this morning. Like in living in the Silicon Valley, I never really understood how the Silicon Valley worked until the last couple of years. When you think about like, oh, do we need to do some fundraising? Do we go Series A? Do we sell equity for for some funding and things like that? And we talk to people who are like deeply entrenched in the Silicon Valley, and they're like, so like, what's your cap table look like? Like, what do you mean? Like, what's your cap table? Like, who's giving you money that has hold a piece of the company? I was like, no one. Like, we bootstrapped this from literally no. I remember being overdrawn in my bank account. I remember I was living in my Toyota 4Runner and having to figure out, well, if I walk to the grocery store, I don't have to buy gas, but I'll have to do 2 trips because I'll have more money for food. And if I buy that food, I won't be able to carry all of it. So I'll have to do 2 trips to the grocery store, but I'll have to buy food. But how far is the walk? Because what's the calorie deficit I'm going to go with? So am I buying enough food to have a net calorie surplus, or do I drive and then have to put gas in the car and have to do less, but I'm driving and I'm not walking? And so I would literally do this like just a broke guy meathead math. So I think, yeah, and to me, it doesn't seem like I'm far removed from that. And just in my mind, it just seems like it was yesterday. I definitely think the staying grounded, having him around, and, you know, I don't think it's ever the opposite, though. Like, he has no problem staying grounded. He's just like, because he does all the money stuff. And I mean, we started the business with more money. I never look at the bank account. I have no idea. But, like, every now and then I get a little, like, rap on the shoulder and be like, hey, man, you know, maybe don't get the Wi-Fi on the next flight. Like, but I think that's been big. And I think, too, the more you travel around, the more you realize that the people who front like that aren't, when you meet people with real money, and I don't want to stereotype either way, but like, I think they come in all shapes and sizes. Like, we know some proper, like, we're talking, you know, 11-figure bank account type people, and like, you'd never know. So I think once you reach an echelon where it's like, though, you meet that level of wealth, you're like, oh, okay, like, and if that's what you're striving for, like, to be able to provide so much value that's what the company could be worth, it's like, oh, like, it seems like everyone at that level is actually kind of cool. I know that's been my experience anyways, but definitely, like, the Silicon Valley is like a lottery. That startup lottery is like, you hit, you're done, man. Like, you make your millions on vested equity and you fucking call it a life.
Yeah. I think you and I are very similar in a lot of ways. Like, we can go down the list. We have, like, basically the same birthday, same first, middle name. We look at a lot of situations in very similar ways. And that's not true of all things. I think we're very different in other ways. But I think one of the things that we definitely have alike is work ethic. Is neither of us are afraid of hard work. Like, I've worked very hard for no compensation my entire life. So it's the money things. It's neither here nor there when you look at it that way. But the thing that I think is most important and really helps us function, has gotten us to this point, is that we perform well under stress. Right? Like, him and I, when we graduated, him and I were the only ones that stuck around the Silicon Valley. Everyone else bounced out to where they were from. They got out of town, and we opened up businesses that mirrored each other, our practices, him and Boss and me in a CrossFit gym that I'm still in, actually. But it's not easy to do that. Be the brokest you'll ever be in your life, hopefully. Right. It's not just not having money, but also having a pile of debt and the urgency that comes with that, coming out of school, and the stress that comes with that. It forces you to perform. You have to produce when you're in a situation like that, especially when you're in a place where there's some of the richest people. You have Mark fucking Zuckerberg buying hospitals and running for president or whatever the fuck he's doing. And there's just people like us coming out of school like, hey, give me $50, I'll crack your back. Right.
I'll do a lot more than that.
Yeah. So I think that's, yeah, right. What else do you need me to do? Jesus. You got another 20 on you? But coming from that was kind of our first, dipping the toes in the sand. And then we kind of came together, and that's actually how Prescript was born, is that we would come together, we would start to talk business, and we would bounce ideas off of each other with our businesses. And then we just had this idea, and we're like, yeah, this guy fucking works hard. I want to work with him. Like, we have similar interests. Let's see if we can do this Silicon Valley thing. And like him, I didn't know that people start their companies with millions and, maybe billions of dollars before they even have a product to sell. So we're like, well, we'll just fucking figure it out. Yeah. I remember having the conversation. We were like about to launch a website, and like, should we do this? Like, I guess so. I don't fucking know. Like, let's just do it and fail fast and figure out where we land. But that's kind of been the philosophy, and the thing that I think has carried us to this point is just more or less persistence.
Yeah, I think the Silicon Valley teaches you that everything is high stakes, right?
Yes.
Like, because, like you said, Zuckerberg, hand to God, okay, I got to be careful with like HIPAA stuff. One of my patients was very close to the Zuckerberg family. Let's just say it that way. So it's like, yeah, that's high stakes, right? If you do a good job, that'll keep coming back, and maybe then some, and maybe that's all you do. So it's like, with everyone in the Valley kind of, trying to do the startup thing, everyone's on all the time, 24/7. You can't miss. You can, like, when there is the chance to hit that sweepstakes, go IPO, your company's stocks are worth, 300 shares at open, and you're just like, oh shit, I just made $20 million. Like, you can't miss. So it's like being around that, I think, was super fun, unbelievably stressful in retrospect. It literally put me in the hospital. Like, I was getting anxiety attacks and I had no fucking idea why. And it was like just constantly being in this pressure cooker, this like business incubator, and trying to be a part of that without even knowing what you were doing. But now looking back and just not knowing what I'm doing, but at least having experience doing it, it's like that was such a godsend, because it regardless of whether it's a conversation with a lawyer or a conversation with a student or an interaction or an email, everything is high stakes. And that's what like the Valley teaches you. And that's what people who are crazy, if you were measuring success by purely like monetary, like people who are super rich, that's what they know, is everything is high stakes. The guy bags your grocery stores to the merger, partnership, buyout, whatever, like everything is got to be taken to that level of severity. And I think that's carried us both like pretty well in the last couple of years, especially.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just listened to a book called Chaos Monkeys, which is all about a guy that basically set the trajectory for what advertising looks like on Facebook. And he lost out big time in Silicon Valley. But just hearing how it all works over there, because I've seen glimpses of it, coming over there and staying with Emily from Boss, and, I don't know if I'm allowed to say she worked at Google, but I'm going to say it anyway. She worked at Google for a while, so I went to Google and walked around the headquarters, and it was wild, absolutely insane. I've never seen anything like it. It's just crazy to see how it works. On the flip side of everything you guys just said, being in that environment, has there been major positives in terms of having people around like that to draw inspiration from, in terms of building your business or having access to people that can help you with like the tech side of things? Like, surely there's been big benefits in that regard.
Yeah, I think for me, living in an environment like that skews your perception on reality, right? There's people that are living so far on the fringes of what, me growing up in bumblefuck Pennsylvania, I didn't know was possible. Like, being a millionaire wasn't a thing where I'm from. And now it's like, oh yeah, that guy driving the Subaru wearing Birkenstocks is a millionaire. And it's like, it skews your perception of what's possible and what's happening around the world, just being immersed in that. So it really shows you with, these are just normal people doing this thing and building companies, making millions of dollars, and having these successful businesses. So if you make the right connections or the right people, then it's not very hard to replicate these processes with, as long as you have an idea that's going to be worth it.
There's kind of this feeling of success by association. Like Jordan said about our colleagues that graduated with us, everyone left. Like, everyone saw the housing prices and the price of living and how much debt they were in, and we're like, I'm going to move back to the middle of America where it's way cheaper and I might have a fighting chance to own a home as someone who like just went through this 8-9 year process to get educated. Where me and him stuck around, and it's like, you made a point about just like the network side, and everyone that you interact with, you realize is someone, right? Most people there are transplants from other parts of America, the other parts of the world. So like, every person that comes in, like on an average day, and I think this isn't being hyperbolic, an average day, if you were to like look at a roster of like patients in your office, it's like director level, C-class, VP level. Like, one of our close friends, and you want to talk about useful networks to have, is like the VP of engineering at Apple, right? Like, this guy's in the war room with Steve. He's been in Apple 20 years. Steve Jobs and Tim Cook. Like, he's the dude. So if we ever have a technical question, that guy's consulting rate, I'm assuming, would be 10 grand an hour if he did it at all, if he had time. So it's like, that's just a guy who, we've got to know in the gym. He's a powerlifter at Boss. Another guy is a CEO of this major company that's owned by this hedge fund that only funds like health related startups. He's just this 72-year-old dude that trains at the gym. So it's like, when I said everything's high stakes, like, when people you run into, and it's a lesson to learn. Like, it's kind of like that old testament of character. It's like how people act in front of people who can't do anything for them. It's like, well, that's the way it should be. The guy who bags your groceries, his father could be the fucking, and you should approach it that way. Not because you need anything from him, obviously, but when you do approach those scenarios with like this modicum of character, it pays back in dividends, right? Like just the personal networks. Like I could open my cell phone, and if I was ever in a jam with anything or needed help with anything, the best of the best at anything I could think of, I guarantee is going to circle right back to people I met in the Silicon Valley.
Mm-hmm. Has that then encouraged you guys to continue to pay it forward, say, in this industry? Because like I know in the past, over the years, I've been like, oh, I want to ask way smarter people than me. And I've reached out to you, and we've had calls in the past, and, you know, I approach it and I'm like, you know, I'm ready to pay you for your time, to basically do whatever you need to get on a call and talk about it. And you're like, yeah, we'll just chat. And I'll be like, what is the super spinatus? What does your shoulder do? And you're just like, man, just does this and this. Like, that's been really important for me, because anytime anyone reaches out on Instagram or Facebook, I'm not a big dog, but I'll help anyone that reaches out to me, because I think it's really important to continue to give back, because without the people paying forward to places like ZeroW, we don't exist.
Yeah, it's definitely something that we're very forward thinking in how we can, and the hard part is, and I need to disclaimer this time and again, it's like, yeah, when it comes to, you know, your ankle hurts, your knee hurts, your shoulder hurts, you want to run faster, you want to jump higher or something, it's like, okay, yeah, probably help you out. But like, all we can do is tell our story on the business side of things, because it's like, we don't have formal business training. So that's always something that, like, if anyone ever wants to get advice, I'm like, let me just tell you what we did, and then you can infer based off of your situation. Because it's like, we had these people, but I think the unique, I don't want to say unique, but like when it comes to the business side, like, yeah, I've reached out, like Dan was my coach, so like I didn't have to go too far for crazy, like, good advice or crazy advice, period, to get that insight. But like on the business side, like we never, probably just out of our own stupidity, like we never reached out. So I'm always really reluctant when people reach out to we don't know what we're doing. We're just experienced in what we've done. And then B, like, really think hard about reaching out for advice on the business end, because if I don't want to rob you of an opportunity to learn the hard way, because that's the only way you'll really learn. So like I talk to my friends who've been in business, you know, people that we all know, and I'll get their input, I'll get their experience, but you have to go through it. Because I'm always, and I'll listen to anyone, I'll get on a call, like, and that's still, I prioritize that. I know the value of that to me, even in a selfish manner, to be able to like recall on my processes and help people out. But I don't ever want to rob someone of an opportunity to figure it out for themselves, because that's something that if they get a dependency on that, there's in times where no one could have helped us. Like, no one could have helped us through the bullshit we've gone through in the last couple of years but ourselves. There's no piece of advice. There's no one I could have reached out to. And if I did reach out to someone and I leaned on that advice, I wouldn't have suffered what I had to suffer to get to where I am, to get through what we went through. Like it is something where it's a battle of attrition. Like, you got to be fucking hard as nails in some ways. And I'm not like talking storming Normandy out of the back of a U-boat kind of thing, but like, it can be physically and emotionally pretty taxing for what you think it might be in owning a business. And if you're not ready to handle that, and you're looking for a branch to cling to, this might not be something you want to pursue.
Yeah. There's been times where we've been faced, or myself, I'll speak for, I've been faced with decisions that will greatly change the trajectory of not only the business, but also my life. And I've been faced with those decisions, and I've really just sat with them. And the thing that I always come back to is going to be, what do your values dictate? You as a person, and that's going to be reflected in your business and your relationships from there. So those are things that I've always been able to rely on and kind of just look into myself. And if I'm having a hard time making a decision, I can have, with whatever information I'm given at the time, I know that I can rely on upholding my values and my integrity. And if I can reflect that in the decision that I make, then I made the right decision. And that's something that I've become very confident with some of the decisions we've had to make in the last year or two. And that's probably the best advice I could give anyone in any scenario. It's just, if you have pure intentions and you're upholding your values, then the decision that you think is right is the right decision.
It's so analogous to training in so many ways, right? Like even you were saying before about people, or alluded to people kind of getting swindled by business coaches because there's so many, especially in fitness. Like, yeah, contact me. I'll get you 100 high quality paying leads in the next 10 days, you know? And it's like, you look into them and you're like, who the fuck is this person? They got 12 followers on Instagram. They've clearly never run a business in their entire life. They're just following the formula that everyone else is following. It's so analogous to training stuff. It's like, you wouldn't go to a coach that hasn't been in the trenches, that hasn't done it. And, you know, there's always this argument of like, do you pick a coach based on whether they're a great lifter or not? It's like, yeah, they don't have to be a great lifter, but fuck it. It's helpful to have done it. It's helpful to have been there.
And because I think at the highest level, empathy is what really reigns supreme, right? Because there's a point where people don't need advice. They just need to know they're not alone. Like, they need to know that they can be seen. Yeah. And if you're at a high level, it's hard to think that someone who hasn't been there can see you. Right? And that's really what people want. People just want to be seen, whatever that looks like metaphorically. So it's like, it is difficult to start to reach out to people who might not have been to the same position as you are, or the same position as you want to go. Like, when we want to talk business, it's like, yeah, like the people I just talk, and it's not necessarily probing them with specific questions. It's really more just like, tell me your story, right? So I can think laterally and where you are, or where you may have been at this intersection as I've run into this problem, or whatever that problem might be, and I can just think laterally at how your decisions apply to my business. Then I filter it through, like Jay said, like that value system, like your heart, your head, and your gut. Then you just make a decision accordingly. But I think empathy is such an undervalued asset in business, and it's just enough to just sit with someone and be like, you know, I understand, like, rather than just trying to sit there and be like, here's what you got to do, you know, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Because the empathy screams of experience. Like, you can't fake tactical empathy. You can't just make it up. You can't manufacture it, right? Just to swing a little bit, or pivot a little bit. The time that you guys have been educating in the industry has shifted quite a lot, right? The pendulum has very much swung from where we came from, which is just shut the fuck up and do it and just work, and you're not working hard enough, to now, you know, you have to be standing at 30 degrees facing the sun at the summer equinox to hit the right pec fiber. You know, how abreast do you guys stay, you know, being educators, how abreast do you guys stay to what's going on so you can deal with people asking questions like that? Or how much do you just ignore the noise and focus on what you're doing and keep paving the way forward?
So I think we've actually built like an ear to the ground sort of model intuitively into the business by accident. So we are in constant communication with all of our students at all times. So we have lab sections similar to university. So we have a lot of interaction with our students year round, years on end. So like, we have a lot of supporting value adds so that we can keep a finger on the pulse. But we want to keep a finger on the pulse of the market that, you know, consumes our products and are currently consuming our products. So we can do that just by the questions that we get asked and the conversations that come up in our lab sections literally daily. So yeah, we've definitely noticed and have to have been mindful, and think have actually done a really good job. We were talking about this the other day, of drawing a line of what matters and then really pushing. And from a culture standpoint, obviously, like, being someone who still lifts regardless of circumstance, like, I'll get off a 15-hour plane, I'll stim up to my fucking eyeballs, and I'll train until I fucking throw up. Like, that will never change. And I think that projection of effort being the great unifier, like, yeah, that can work. You know, the equinox, 30 degrees on the solstice to the sun and the pec fibers or whatever, but it only works like if you take it there. So I think because we're still, and everyone that works with us is so kind of, they live in both worlds, in the academic and the applied, and like, they have a body of work in both fields that to support it. It's definitely something that we've noticed. We've noticed it in real time, and not had to combat it, but, like, you know, just put it into perspective, right? So I think, you know, all of our coaches are unique in the fact that they're all pursuant to some sort of physical goal. They're all actively working digitally and in person with clientele of various populations. So, like, you can kind of come with this, like, you know, this three-headed dog of experience that can kind of put stuff in its place pretty quickly. Because the last thing we want to be known for is, like, you know, the purely academic PubMed ID It's like, nah, man, we get results. This is coaching. Like, if you want to fucking throw footnote citations at me, like, show me your results. Like, show me your clients. Show me who you work with. Show me who your top educator works with. Like, proof's in the fucking pudding. So, and then also, like, show me a bicep vein. At the end of the day, it's like no one cares what you know. Like, they care who you are, right? And that's what people are buying. So that's really what we try and keep at the forefront of the messaging is like, look, when the last fucking, Moxie fucking research EMG study, when all that goes dark, where will we find you? Will we find you in the lab or will we find you in the gym? It's like, you'll find me in the fucking gym, man. So that's something that is near and dear to the brands and the brand's image, because the brand is just a reflection of our values.
Do you see the same kind of shift in the CrossFit and weightlifting world?
To some extent, yeah. There's always going to be the trendy, stuff that pops up on Instagram. People are going to see the shiny object and kind of chase that and follow that, and then it just falls off because people don't get results with it. But kind of going back to what Shallow was saying is that information appraisal doesn't happen in the comment section, right? It happens with like the gold standard for information as a peer review article, right? Or a meta-analysis or something like that, where people have their eyes on it, they're giving their opinions or kind of vetting the information that's coming at you. So I'm very lucky, and I think our Prescript community is very lucky that we have things like our lab sections and the collective where people can come in with an idea and just appraise that idea, right? Is we can get a lot of eyeballs on it, whatever that is, whether it's powerlifting, whether it's CrossFit, whether it's weightlifting, whether it's hypertrophy training. That's probably the most trendy one of all of it. There's always stuff coming in and out. And a lot of the things that I revert back to is just, if the good shit is the stuff that people have been doing all along. There's not like this new secret that's going to come out that's going to be the thing that's going to take you to the next level. Like these new flashy ideas. Cool. It's dope to think about this stuff. I'd love to think about this stuff. I think all of us probably do, and that's why we're in the room. But when it comes down to it, I'll bet all of us got strong doing dumb shit. Right?
Yeah.
Right? It fucking works. Just do the work. And I think that's a really important message for a lot of these people that are coming out without the experience is just do the shit. It doesn't matter if it's right. It doesn't matter if it's wrong. Do the shit and think about it, and you'll figure out what's more right and what's more wrong over time. And once you start to get results, then you can start to recreate that and refine that process.
A lot of it. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, all the time, effort and consistency trumps everything. So whenever someone comes to me, like, hey, I want to do this kind of early stance lunge, I'm like, do you really want to do that, or did you see someone trendy on Instagram do it?
Right.
And like, no, we're not going to do that because you still suck at doing a normal lunge. Right. So let's just, put a little bit more effort, be a little bit more consistent with what you're already doing, and you're going to get results.
Yeah, I think the one thing is like that hyper academic approach is just builds fear, and that fear it's literally crippling. It cripples these kids to inaction because they're afraid to take a step off their doorstep because some fucking prick's going to come on the comment section. So like one thing that we provide is like, we are hyper critical of everyone that comes in. Like our staff top down have internal conversations, and it's all for the pursuant of higher information, higher applied knowledge. And so no one's really safe, but we know that if you put something out and like if someone, starts flaming you in the comment section, like, oh, you better look the fuck out. Like, cause there's 10, 15 people who are in a lab with this person every week who might understand a deeper context than Instagram can provide. So like we kind of, it's like a mob. Like we offer protection services, but we offer a play. Well, here's the thing. When you think to that level and you have these discussions impartial with no ego, you're usually going to land a little bit closer to the mark where most people aren't going to try to dissect you on social media. Well, actually, push nose up glasses. It's like you end up thinking through all of the counterpoints, which is what you should do, right? You should try and make the stuff you put out or your approach be, unfuckwithable, like, unimpeachable. And we offer a sounding board to be able to do that because, not to be too close to the point, but like, a lot of people in the fitness education space create content that ensures a potential clientele might look at them as intelligent at the thing that they do. Like that's really the bottom line. And if this overcomplicated, hyper intellectual approach scares them from doing that, it scares them from doing their job, and that's a real problem. So like a lot of what we do is contextualize it, create counterpoints to something that might oppose it, and then understanding the context for where a particular training implement or strategy or method could be used, so that they know where these things to go for, like give them the tools to go out and kind of defend themselves, so that they can at least just step out. I don't deal with people not even turning on their Zoom videos. If I'm in a call and we're talking about something and someone doesn't turn on the camera, like, get fucking involved, right? Like, if you can't turn on the camera, what are you going to do when your clients have to see you? Like, I don't give a shit. Like, I'm not going to buy anything from you. You guys want something from me, right? Like, turn your camera on, get involved, like, put some fucking clothes on, whatever it is. Like, I need at least that. No one's gonna flame you. No one's gonna yell at you. There's no consequence to this. But I need you to have some skin in the game, right? And that's like an important thing for me. Like, he still coaches at a high level. He still competes at a high level. I make sure that twice a year I'm in front of the best athletes in the world, because it's like, I'm not just sitting here talking bullshit. This is exactly what I do when I go and work with the best athletes in the world. These are the same principles. I'm not just sitting here in my fucking house in the middle of nowhere just pontificating about, lines of pull or some bullshit. Like, I'll get on the floor and I'll fucking coach, and I expect you guys to have courage is such a dumb word. Like, get off your fucking ass, grow a set, and go do your goddamn job.
Preach.
Sorry. It frustrates me to no end. It's like the crippling inaction, like the hyper, just like the hypercritical approach that just stops people from doing anything. It's like, man, you can't post something on the internet. How are you going to talk to another human being?
I feel like I'm slowly morphing into Louis Simmons, because the more stuff that comes out, and then the more weird that training gets, and then the more people that are privy to how I teach things and what I do, that are then like, nah, you shouldn't do it that way. Like, yeah, cool, but my guys win. Like,
yeah,
my guys are stronger than your guys, and stronger than everyone else's guys and women. Like, we're gonna keep doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
It's weird though. Like, I feel like I was the antithesis of old man yells at cloud, and now I'm literally old man yells at cloud.
Yeah, get it. You're almost apologetic to all the old men that you judge for yelling at clouds.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but it is almost like a rite of passage. There's only like one or two that are yelling at clouds. What are the rest of them doing? You want to be infamous, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
James, any final questions?
Nah, I've just been sitting here soaking up game, just enjoying having you guys here. This is still really surreal to me.
So weird.
It's a pleasure, brother.
So strange.
No, I really appreciate it.
Yeah,
I got nothing.
I want to know who your biggest influences have been. I know it's a sort of fucking cliche question, either in the industry or otherwise.
I gotta say, my old man. It's funny because my birthday's on Father's Day. This year it landed that way, and like I don't know, on my birthday I just like to reflect a little bit, just over the course of my life, and I never fucking thought I'd be in Australia right now. Like, that's not something people do where I grew up. So I'm very thankful for the lessons and the values that my father instilled upon me at a young age. That he's 69. He works out twice a day. He could still beat the fuck out of me if he needs to. Like, he's just a G, and he's worked hard his whole life. He had his own business, and I think whether that was instilled upon me or it left some sort of impression on me at a young age that felt like I had some pretty big shoes to fill. So I gotta shout out the old man.
I might follow you in on that, because I feel like anything else would just be disrespectful. But like, my dad used to come home from work, and the only way I could stay up past this, like when my mom went to sleep, was when I watched movies. And my dad is like the softest dude in the world, like nicest guy, biggest heart. He's like this jovial kind of guy from Eastern Canada, but I was his only son. So like, I don't want to say his idea of parenting, but the movies we would watch when mom went to bed and then I could stay up was all like the most manly 80s action movies ever, like 80s, 90s, Terminator, Rambo, everything. And like, that clearly had a huge impact on my life, right? I was like, okay, I got to get jacked, because clearly that's what's going to save the world one day. But then like, you grow up looking at that and you go like, all right, well, I want to be like the guys on the TV. And then you get a certain age and you realize you just want to be the guy on the couch, right? The guy who like worked his ass off for 30 years, came home and just enough energy to fucking turn on Rambo for the 3rd time this week and just fucking clock out before he's got to go back to work the next day at 6 a.m. So I think, yeah, like I'll follow you in on that for sure. Cause like you talked about earlier, like how do you stay grounded? It's just growing up and seeing that all day. It's like, I never thought my dad would like smack me upside the head if I like, I don't know, did something stupid or like let my head get too far up my ass. But he'd just be like, he wouldn't get it, and that to me would be like such a disappointment. He would never project it, but I would feel that, and it's like, dude, like you owe it to the dude on the couch who like moved out of this like terrible place where my parents are from. Not terrible, but there'd be no future for me there. There's no way I'd be here if it wasn't for that. So like you owe it to him on the days where you don't want to do shit. It's like, you think you fucking wanted to do what he did for 30 years for your snot-nosed smart ass? And so yeah, definitely shout out the old man for that one.
Sick. What about people or the if you were to say the number one group or person or whoever that you look up to in our industry?
That's tough. It's personal now, right? Like I would say probably Steffi Cohen for sure. Like I just spend so much time around her, and Hybrid and them were so integral just in from a friend standpoint, like to see your friends go through like a meteoric rise, like arguably outside of, the major household names like CrossFit or like an F45 or something like that, like a more niche fitness market company, to see that evolve over the years, because they were on the rise just as we started. So I think, the experiences that they went through were super helpful for us, and just the continued evolution I think is always cool. Like to watch her go from a powerlifter or come into powerlifting, exert world dominance in powerlifting, and then get into boxing and just like constantly be looking for that next thing, I think is something that it's really cool just to be able to fly in and hang out for a few days and not even talk about the business side, but just everything else that actually drives those decisions. That for me would be like, without a doubt, probably the front runner for me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to get too weird with this, but I have to say it's got to be this guy.
Well, now I'm gonna cry.
I know, man. It's not like any, superficial, whatever kind of way, but being able to see the way this guy operates and the capacity that he can operate at, seeing the work ethic and the way that you can form relationships. It's just, you're very good at the things that you do, and you do them with a very, very pure intention. And I admire that a lot. And I don't really fuck with many industry people. Like, I'm not about the clout chasing or any of that shit. It's just very superficial for me. And I think that this guy can form genuine relationships in a place where there's a lot of disingenuous intentions, and that's really impressive to me.
Fuck yeah.
He lets me do that though. If I had to worry about the balance sheet, I'd tell you the whole company would be in the red. We'd owe everyone a bunch of money. I'd have a fucking, I don't know, I'd have a few portions in the driveway and the IRS up my ass. So no, I appreciate it, man.
Always.
Amazing. Thank you guys so much for spending the last hour or so with us. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to come hang out with us. So,
of course, man.
Thank you.
And thanks for jumping on a whim, Jiunta.
I appreciate you guys having me. This is unreal for me.
Swiss Army knife.
Yeah.
This guy put him in. He's your guy, utility.
Awesome.
Yeah, well, that was my fault. I had no idea you were coming with. I just saw the Jordan Shallow seminar, and I just assumed.
So I haven't been on
under the radar.
I haven't been on Instagram in 51 days, so I don't know anything that's going on.
Did you get a
Life
coin?
must be so good.
Yeah.
Like a sobriety coin?
Oh,
How does that work?
that's how I feel. That's how I feel.
meetings?
I feel good.
Can I ask why? I know we kind of wrapped, but I'm really curious.
It was just it was eating me up, I'd have like clients messaging me on Instagram, my like Google chat, then messaging my phone. I was like, if I can get rid of one of them that doesn't serve me, then that's fine. Instagram was the one to go.
Yeah, hey man, whatever works.
That's good. And all the people that actually care about me reached out.
Gotcha.
Otherwise,
Yeah.
so it's good.
Last little thing. A little bit of RX Radio trivia, not trivia, but I was in Ireland once, and I was listening to the radio, and the theme music for RX Radio came on, and I was like, fuck yeah, these guys are like on the radio. So it starts playing, and it's like, come down to McGeary's Tires. If you don't, you'll be dumber than a sack of potatoes, or something like that. Like it was a tire shop ad using the same music. I was like, this is fucking awesome.
I hope you guys get royalties from that.
We don't, but we should probably pay someone.
Yeah.
Hopefully that's sorted out. We'll talk to the legal team. I think Kyle,
right?
yeah, that's funny. We're out there, man. We're out there.
All right. That's us. Thank you guys. Thank you so much for listening to the ZeroW Podcast. If you want more information, head to our Instagram, @zero_weakness. Hit the link in the bio for all of our services and any information on upcoming workshops and events. Don't forget to leave us a 5-star review so we can have a broader reach and answer more people's questions. Thank you once more.